Now, when we're analyzing markets like the wine market or the grape market or the beer market or emeralds or something like that, with supply and demand, we're using the model of perfect competition. And this model uses the supply and demand framework. And there's a lot of assumptions that are made to simplify the model. Frequently unrealistic assumptions. The first is that prices are flexible. Remember, the law of supply and demand is that prices adjust quickly to get to equilibrium. In order for prices to adjust to get to that equilibrium, the prices have to be able to move. And in some markets, if prices don't move or they move very slowly, then the model isn't going to hold. The second assumption is that there's many buyers and many sellers. That means there's no monopolies, like one seller, or monopsonies, one buyer, or oligopolies, which means few sellers, many buyers and many sellers. Enough buyers and sellers that each buyer can buy all they want to without affecting the price. The effect on the price is negligible. And there's so many sellers and each seller is so small that each seller can sell all he or she wants to without affecting the price either. So sellers end up being price takers. That means they take the price of the market as given, and they can't set the price of their product. There's two types of sellers. There's price takers and price searchers. Price searchers are sellers that can set the price of their product. Set it to whatever they want to. They set it too high, they're not going to sell as much, but they can choose the price of their product. Price takers are participants in markets that are sellers that have no choice but to sell their product for the market price. If they sell it for just a little bit more than the market price, they're not going to sell anything. The third assumption is that the goods or services are exactly the same. The fourth assumption is that there's perfect information. Everybody knows how much each seller is selling their product for, and they know the quality of the product. Perfect information. And the last is that the sellers can easily get in the market or leave the market if they want to. We call that free entry and exit. Doesn't really have anything to do with price. It just means that if there's money to be made in the market, more sellers can come into the market and start selling. And if they're losing money, the sellers can get out of the market. Free entry and exit of sellers. Now, are these assumptions valid? I mean, think about any kind of market that you want to buy something and see if these assumptions are valid in this market. I mean, is there anything that you buy where the seller can't set the price, where they're a price taker? Most markets are, the sellers are price searchers. Very few are price takers. How many markets where the goods are exactly the same? How many markets are where there's perfect information? So these assumptions are difficult to meet. And the fact is that we use this market all the time this model all the time, but very, very few markets are actually truly competitive. There's a few markets, like say the market for gold, or silver, commodities, some agricultural goods, that actually may meet the definition of a perfectly competitive market. So in the market for gold, well, all the sellers are selling gold. They usually sell them in 100-ounce bars that are 0.999 fine gold. The gold inside one bar is the same as the gold at another bar. There's a certain price for gold. People aren't really going to be willing to pay more than the going price for an ounce of gold. So the sellers that are selling gold, they're mining gold and producing, they pretty much have to take whatever the market price is. It's changing all the time, day by day and minute by minute, but whatever it is, they pretty much have to take that price and sell their gold for that price. Even though overall the market demand and the market supply is always changing, the seller doesn't have any control over their price. The goods are the same. Everybody knows really what gold is. A lot of available information for people and what they're buying. And the gold market is very flexible. It changes. The price changes all the time. But very few markets, as I said, can actually fall into this category. That doesn't mean this model isn't useful. Even though that we start analyzing a market, say the market for wine or something like that, it's not going to meet these assumptions. But that doesn't mean, as I said, the market isn't good. It still can give some good, valid results about telling us something about price and quantity. We use the market for emeralds. We made the assumption that emeralds are all the same. Well, they're not all the same, of course. There's varying sizes and degrees and color and clarity. But if we're going to use the model, we pretty much have to make the assumption in the model that all emeralds are the same, or all the naturally occurring ones are the same, and all the lab created ones are the same. If we're going to be using the wine example, we're making the assumption that all wine is the same, which of course isn't true. There's thousands of different types of wine, but we make the assumption that every bottle is exactly the same. This model of perfect competition is kind of like a big farmer's market. Imagine that you're going to this gigantic farmer's market. There's a whole lot of people, a whole lot of sellers, and whatever the product is that you're looking for, all the sellers are selling that product, and they're all identical from seller to seller. You know every seller's, what they're selling, and you know every seller's price. Perfect information. No seller can start selling that product a little bit higher than the market because they won't be able to sell anything. This is what the model of perfect competition is like. Imagine something like that, this gigantic farmer's market, and now we're starting to get close to what a perfectly competitive market would look like. But of course, most markets are not perfectly competitive. Very, very few, as I said. We still go ahead and use this supply and demand analysis anyway, and it gives some good results, but you have to keep in mind what the assumptions are for this market and which assumptions that we're violating. And if we're violating too many of those assumptions, then this may not be a good model to use. If we were going to look at the model of the market for diamonds, can't really use supply and demand analysis for it. Why not? Because the diamond market is a monopoly. De Beers Corporation is really the only seller. So there's not many sellers in that market. And that's a big enough assumption to say, okay, this model will not work for the diamond market. We may be able to use the market for emeralds or something like that. It still isn't perfectly competitive, but it's somewhat close to it. So what about carpet cleaning? Let's say that you rent an apartment And at the end of the year, when you're supposed to move out, in the contract, it says that you're supposed to clean the carpets. So you say, okay, how much is this going to cost? It's a 2-bedroom apartment. You call around a few places, and the first place you call says, how big is it? And you say, it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath place. And they go, yeah, it's we can do it for $150. Say, okay, thanks. You call another place, and they say, well, how many stairs are there? There's 5 stairs at the entry, and they go, well, we charge an extra $5 per stair. How dirty is it? Because we charge an extra $20 for the cleaning. It's $210 plus the stairs, plus extra if you need the cleaning. Go, okay. Call another place. And they say, well, we really can't tell you what the price. We don't know unless we come out there and look at it. Let's schedule an appointment to come out there and look at it next week. And they come out and they measure every single room. They say, yeah, it's going to be $450. Go, $450? You go, well, it's since we already got the truck here, we could do it right now. We'll do it right now for $300. Go, wow. Maybe not. No thanks. Maybe you call another place and it's $95 to come out and clean the carpet. Why so many prices? I mean, if there's a supply of carpet cleaners and there's a demand for carpet cleaners, why don't we see an equilibrium price? If we look at this model for carpet cleaning, hey, there's a supply, there's a demand, there's an equilibrium price, PQ, P star and Q star. If P star is $100, why don't we see $100? Why don't, every time we call a carpet cleaner, they quote us $100 for this 2-bedroom apartment? Well, what this means is, if you're seeing many prices like that, it's not a perfectly competitive market. Some of these assumptions are being violated. If the assumptions aren't being violated, then we're only going to see one price. But one indication of many prices means that some of these assumptions are being violated. And what are these assumptions that are being violated? Well, first of all, they're not price takers. They're price searchers. They're setting their own price. Maybe there's not a lot of sellers that are out there doing carpet cleaning. Maybe there's only a few companies out there. Maybe the goods are not exactly the same. Maybe some carpet cleaners are much better than other carpet cleaners. There's not perfect information. You don't really know if these guys are good, if they're going to show up on time and do a good job and maybe steal a few things on their way out. You may be able to get a little extra information on Yelp or somewhere by looking them up first to see what kind of quality they have. But there's many assumptions here that are being violated. And so it's not a perfectly competitive market. And one big indication of that is we're getting a bunch of different prices for this. If it was a perfectly competitive market, we would see one price and the quality of all the sellers would be exactly the same. Okay, you've been studying for a while, economics, and you got a headache. You go down to Walmart to get some Advil for your headache. And you see this. Advil, ibuprofen. Advil is just another name for ibuprofen. 200 milligrams of ibuprofen. 100 coated tablets, $7.97, $8. Should you buy it? Well, you look around and at Walmart on another counter, they've got the Equate brand, which is Walmart's brand, $2.48. One was $8, one was $2.48. What's the difference here? Well, this one says ibuprofen, 200 milligrams, 100 coated tablets. Big difference in price. They must be different, right? Okay, so go look at the ingredients. Difficult to do because you got a headache. Here's the equate ingredients. Ibuprofen, 200 milligrams, pain reliever. Let's go see the Advil ingredients. Ibuprofen, 200 milligrams, pain reliever. Is this a perfectly competitive market? I don't think so. The goods are pretty darn close. Maybe, are they exactly the same? It's a difference in price, huge difference in price. So you know it's not perfectly competitive just for that. But are the goods exactly the same? Why isn't it a perfectly competitive market here? Why is Advil able to charge $8 and Walmart can only get $2.50? Well, Advil's got the name Walmart. Essentially has a monopoly on that name. And many people say, well, I trust that name Walmart. I know what I'm getting. I don't know what I'm getting with Walmart. And maybe it's not as good. How do you know? Is it really the same? Is the Advil greater or better quality than the Walmart or what you find in the dollar store? You don't really know for sure. Why not? Because there's not perfect information. If you had perfect information here and they were identical, it'd be fairly easy to make a decision, but you don't really know. Maybe the Advil is a little bit better. Maybe it's worth paying the $8 for the Advil over the Walmart price of $2.50. Which would you do? One of my students said his mom was a doctor, and there was a big difference between the generics and the brand name drugs. The generics might be a little bit inferior. So in other words, 200 milligrams might be the name brand, but the generics might be 195 milligrams or 205. Maybe the quality control wasn't quite as good. Maybe not. Maybe they're not exactly the same. You don't really know. You don't have good information. As a result, Advil can charge triple the price for probably the same ingredients or very close to the same ingredients. Well, maybe you don't want to take a chance because after all, you're only paying 3 cents for the Advil pill and 1 cent for the Walmart pill, and you're putting it into your mouth. But what about other things here that might not be so important? How about this one at Walmart? Listerine, mouthwash, 0 alcohol. It's 1 liter, $6. Where is the Walmart price? The Walmart price, alcohol-free, mouthwash, $3.37. It's quite a bit cheaper. Are they the same? They look the same. You read the equate actually looks smaller, but it's not. If you look at the label, it's also 1 liter. Well, let's take a look at the ingredients. Here's the equate. Oops, that's the other one. Equate Listerine ingredients. Water, sorbitol, propylene glycol. Sounds like antifreeze. Poloxamer 407. What the heck is that? Sodium something, sodium benzoate, phosphoric acid, eucalyptol, methyl salis. I don't know what these things are. Let's see what Walmart ingredients are. Here's the Walmart one. You could sit here for 20 minutes trying to figure out if the ingredients are the same. Walmart inactive ingredients. The active ingredient in both of them is sodium fluoride. The inactive, if Walmart is water, sorbitol solution, sounds the same. Propylene glycol, sounds the same. Flavor, sodium lauryl sulfate, poloxamer 407, sounds familiar. Sodium benzoate, phosphoric acid, sucralose, red dye 40. I don't know. You have to be a chemist to try to figure this stuff out. We don't exactly have perfect information, but one thing I know is that I'm only going to put it in my mouth and spit it out. And yet, the Advil, the Listerine is $6, and the Equate is $3.37. So Listerine's almost able to get double in this market, mainly because of their name. They've got the Listerine name. You don't have to spend 20 minutes trying to figure out what's in it. You know it's high quality, so you buy it. How much more is it? I don't know. It's obviously not a perfectly competitive market because Listerine is a price searcher. They can sell this apparently for whatever price. They don't have to take the $3.37 price. My guess is the perfectly competitive price of this anti-cavity mouthwash is probably closer to the Walmart price. And the amount that Listerine can get is because they've managed to differentiate their product and have their own name. The best thing you can do if you're selling in a perfectly competitive market like this is to try to make your product different somehow than everybody else's. Dye it purple, dye it blue, put it in a different container, advertise it, have your own name on this that people can associate with quality that no one else has. You have a monopoly on that name that people can associate. And in the minds of the consumer, the products are different. Maybe they are different, who really knows? But in the minds of the consumer, they're different. And that's the important thing for the seller, is to try to make their product different than everybody else so that they can charge more than the perfectly competitive price. If everyone knew that they're absolutely identical, it's unlikely that Listerine would be able to charge more than a perfectly competitive price.